What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Here at Comics Explained, we ask the real questions, the hard-hitting questions. A really good example, during Daredevil Season 2, if that season took place over the course of a few weeks or a few months, who was cutting the Punisher's hair? Because his hair style never changed. It was always the same. Maybe he's just really good at cutting his own hair. I have no idea. But I have seen you guys asking questions like, hey Rob, haven't you covered some of this stuff before? Yes, but this is all part of the bigger picture. What you guys don't know and what you'll find down in the comments section is a link to a playlist that I've made where I'm basically going through all these stories that lead into Avengers, New Avengers, and then eventually Secret Wars. Now we covered Secret Wars. I love the way I did those videos. Those aren't gonna change. Those will just be thrown in, which I'll probably throw them in by the time you see this video. However, Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, which covers the collapse of the multiverse, I did not like those videos. And so those videos are going to be finished. They're going to be added and sort of, remastered and that kind of a thing. What we're also going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to cover the entire Thanos chronology leading into Infinity War. So that's going to be a great big huge thing that goes on. Of course, that's in addition to all the Marvel Generations, Marvel Legacy, and all those stories that I absolutely love and haven't had a chance to cover yet. So we are at this point where we are dealing with Iron Man versus the Hulk. Now, those of you guys who have been around my channel for a long time, who saw this video when it first got popped up, bear with me for a second, because we have a lot of new folks to the world of Comics Explained. When it came to Hulk versus Iron Man, this came out of an event called Original Sin. And when it comes to Marvel Comics, you have different types of events. Really, you have two main events. You have events where it's just crazy things happen, and then the bad guy gets beat, and that's it. Then you have events where Marvel uses that as a way to catapult new characters or existing characters into new stories. Avengers versus X-Men, for example, was a way to begin the process of bringing back the mutant population in Marvel Comics, restoring the Phoenix Force, elevating the character of Hope Summers, the first mutant born after the events of House of M. Original Sin served the purpose of basically providing or introducing new characters. Original Sin dealt with this story where Uatu the Watcher, this being in the Marvel Universe that sees and essentially knows all, was basically killed by some mysterious person. Now, we didn't know who that person was initially. We later found out that it was classic Nick Fury. Of course, this massive battle ensued between Nick Fury and basically the Avengers. Nick Fury told Thor that Gore was right. Thor lost the ability to wield his hammer. All these different things started cropping up with all these different characters. The result is that Marvel grabbed those things and started bringing in new stories. For example, when Marvel acquired the rights to Angela, a character who was a Spawn villain, they used Original Sin to reveal that she was the sister that Thor and Loki never knew about. The result is that her character was rolled into Marvel Comics, came up in Guardians of the Galaxy, had a few titles of her own, and that was really about it. But all this came out of a villain named the Orb, who was one of the most irrelevant villains ever, grabbing one of the eyes of the Watcher and blasting all these secrets to the superheroes who were present. The result is that all these memories began to basically just spray across everyone. And so what Original Sin, Iron Man versus Hulk did, is it allowed Marvel to come back and say, hey, here is a part of the Incredible Hulk's origin that you never knew about. This is, in every sense of the word, a retcon, retroactive continuity. If you're new here, that basically means that a writer comes in and changes something from the way that it used to be, or adds something in that wasn't there before. In this instance, we're adding a new dynamic to the origin of the Incredible Hulk. And so again, this is really kind of a cool scenario, because what this does is it initially opens up with Bruce Banner and Iron Man just beating the crap out of one another. The Incredible Hulk just absolutely wrecking Iron Man. Now, the basis behind this actually ends up coming out of all these different things with regards to the ongoing Incredible Hulk story. And that's one of the reasons why, if you were following all my Incredible Hulk videos, we followed him chronologically, and then we stopped, because what I wanted to do was use this story as a way to segue into the next stage of Incredible Hulk. This also basically gives us a flashback to the early days of Bruce Banner's life. Now, something else to point out here is that this invokes something called Extremis. Now, Extremis was this whole thing that we talked about when we did the Iron Man story of the same name by Warren Ellis. Of course, you'll find that down in the comment section of that huge playlist that we have. It's like 84 videos right now. It's nuts. With Extremis, it was basically this virus virus that had been coded to directly impact the human genome, but this virus could be modified in a litany of different ways. The problem with this was that the ease of adjusting it is what allowed so many villains to use it, and it's really what allowed all these stories with the extremist tech just kind of going absolutely nuts and going haywire. And so the result of this is that there was a story with the Incredible Hulk where Bruce Banner was shot in the head because there was this crazy fanatical group that believed he was going to cause this extinction level event. The result was that with Bruce Banner being shot in the head, eventually he was brought to Tony Stark, and Extremis was used to basically heal him. And so again, that's where, Bruce Banner stands in the modern day. But back in the past, this all goes back to Bruce Banner basically proposing the gamma bomb to the United States military. Now, of course, this also goes into the early days of Bruce Banner first encountering General Thunderbolt Ross, different things like that. But the idea is that where Bruce Banner intended to use the gamma bomb as a means to show that gamma radiation could be used to basically heal all sorts of ailments and illnesses out there, the US military didn't care about that. What the US military cared about is that this was going to be the next generation of warfare. And so the idea is that as long as they are a step ahead, as long as the world's using nuclear weapons and suddenly the US has a gamma bomb, which is thousands of times more powerful than a nuclear weapon, no one's going to attack the US. And so because of this, where the US military only cares about the weapons use, Banner's argument is that this can be used for so much more. And so this is the quintessential example of an argument between an idealist and really just weapons manufacturing. Now, of course, this inevitably brings in Tony Stark. Now, Tony Stark's not necessarily invited here. He's just kind of there. But the idea is that as the world's leading weapons manufacturer, it makes sense that he would be here. But where he looks at this whole bomb, the way it's been designed by Bruce Banner, and while he's just kind of in a drunken state and just being a dick, he's basically saying, look, Banner designed this bomb so that it wouldn't explode in the same capacity. So it's really not living up to its full destructive potential. Now, of course, Banner responds by saying the basis behind this was to ensure the bomb could demonstrate a use in terms of practical, applications for bettering humanity, more so than just destroying things. Now, the cool thing about this is that this had always really been Banner's perspective. Bruce Banner had always looked around at the world and said, let's find ways to make it better. This perspective began to shift when he became the Incredible Hulk. And the reason why is because of the fact that as the Incredible Hulk, Banner was fighting a war on two sides. On one side, it was people who were pursuing him for a litany of reasons, because they wanted to harness the power of the Incredible Hulk, because they wanted to use Bruce Banner and the Hulk for their own ends. At the same time, it was fighting a war against the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the superhero community, trying to get them to believe that he was a guy that could be trusted. But even in the eyes of Bruce Banner, all those superheroes out there looked at him as just a means to an end. Well, when it really hits the fan, let's just call in the Hulk because he's the one that can solve the problems. More often than not, he would show up, he would beat the hell out of the bad guy, and the day would be saved. But Banner developed a lot of resentment over the years because he saw himself just simply being used as a means to an end. And so in truth, a lot of these things were coming to a head. Now, of course, with this focusing almost exclusively on the whole idea of, Bruce Banner's early history, because Tony Stark is going through and learning about these different things, because he's been blasted or at least been forced to basically remember these things that he had long since forgotten, the result is that Bruce Banner is experiencing the same thing. And so what this is basically a race to confirm this information. They're all standing in front of the orb, who's got one of the eyes of the Watcher during Original Sin. The orb blasts the entire superhero community that's present with the memories or with everything the Watcher's ever seen. Suddenly, the Iron Man realizes, oh my god, I think I'm the one that made the Incredible Hulk the way he was by messing with his gamma bomb. He's on a race to figure out whether or not he actually did. At the same time, Bruce Banner is blasted with this realization that Tony Stark is supposedly messed with the gamma bomb, and he's checking to see if this is actually true. Now, these are inevitably going to lead to one another. And the reason why is because it's essentially Tony Stark trying to basically play defense with, the Incredible Hulk playing offense. Did Tony Stark really screw me over? Tony Stark, did I really screw Bruce Banner over? But for one of these guys, the truth is more terrifying for them than it is for the other. Now, of course, again, what we end up finding out is that because of the fact that Tony Stark had, made this great big huge speech in front of Bruce Banner to General Thunderbolt Ross and these members of the US military about how the bomb was basically being decreased in destructive capabilities by Bruce Banner, suddenly Tony Stark's called in by General Thunderbolt Ross, hey, are you willing to to pick up the slack. The result is that Tony Stark begins the process of meddling with the bomb. Now, something else this does is it brings in Arno Stark. Arno Stark is basically this brother of Tony Stark that he never knew about. And in fact, what we ended up learning is that Arno Stark was, for all intents and purposes, engineered to be the smartest man in the world. The idea here is that Arno basically resides within the Iron Metropolitan, this massive technologically advanced city that Tony Stark and Arno built together under the hopes that they could usher in this new era of peace. Now, of course, this led to Iron Man more or less abandoning the project, really kind of going back to the world of being a superhero and leaving Arno to run it, something that he was more than able to do. But with Bruce Banner knowing this, what he basically does is quote unquote overdose on extremists. The result is that when this happens and he collapses, he's immediately met by a message from Arno. Now, of course, Bruce Banner begins to put on this ruse. Oh yeah, man, the extremist tech is acting kind of weird. I got it sorted out. I got it good. I think I know what the problem is. All I need for you to do is fix it for me. So again, this is really Bruce Banner playing into Arno, because remember, Arno's pretty new on the scene. All he knows about Bruce Banner, all he knows about these heroes is what he's seen on the news, but he does not know about them personally. All Arno knows is that Bruce Banner was shot in the head at some point. The extremist tech is what helped him. Suddenly Bruce Banner passes out and he says, hey, there's something wrong with the extremist tech. And Arno says, okay, I'll fix it for you. That's it. That's what's going on between these two guys. But it's cool because it's really Bruce Banner just kind of ensuring the idea that he's basically going to be able to do whatever it is that he needs to do. The problem with this is that when Bruce Banner shows up to Stark Mansion, when Arno begins using the extremist tech to basically go through and quote unquote fix the problem that Bruce Banner pointed out, Bruce Banner immediately morphs into the Incredible Hulk. But this is not the regular Incredible Hulk. This is not Savage Hulk. This is a guy named Doc Green. Now, this is not the first time that we've seen a character like this. Back in 1991, during his massive run on the character, writer Peter David wrote a story that basically saw the Incredible Hulk, Grey Hulk, and Bruce Banner merged into a singular being. Of course, this was Incredible Hulk issue number 377, but this was basically a guy that most fans refer to as the Professor. And the idea here was that this version of the Incredible Hulk was extremely smart. This is the same version of the Incredible Hulk that you saw if you managed to read Future Imperfect. It was Maestro Hulk versus like that merged quote unquote Professor Hulk. With this version, it's much the same way, but the difference here is that this is the Incredible Hulk basically modified with extremist tech. The idea here is that in this instance, this version of the Incredible Hulk is extremely smart, is as smart, basically has the capacities of Bruce Banner. It also has all the memories of Bruce Banner. And so what this means is that where Banner was running around trying to figure out whether or not Tony Stark had actually messed with the gamma bomb, resulting in him becoming the Incredible Hulk in the first place, the Incredible Hulk has all those memories, or Doc Green Hulk has all those memories. And so he's very much in the same position. The problem with this is that with Tony Stark basically racing against time to try to get all the pieces together, the Hulk just wants to take him out. And so the implication here from Tony Stark going through and looking at the gamma bomb experiment and all those things is that he actually did modify the bomb. Him messing with the bomb was the reason why, when it went off, Banner rushing to save Rick Jones, this dumb kid who had jumped in the path of the bomb, was bombarded with gamma radiation and had basically become the Incredible Hulk. The result of this is that when he realizes this, it coincides with the arrival of Doc Green. Now, here's the craziest thing about this. This version of the Incredible Hulk is not like Worldbreaker Hulk. Worldbreaker Hulk was driven by just anger, wrath. This one is probably more intelligent than Worldbreaker Hulk. Regardless of which one's more powerful, in the face of Tony Stark, he's getting absolutely wrecked. Now, of course, he gets this little bit of information to what it was that he had also done later on that same night. And of course, we don't find out exactly what that is. Instead, what follows is probably one of the greatest ass whoopings in the history of comic books, pardon my language, with Iron Man donning this newest generation of the Hulkbuster armor in an effort to take down, Doc Green Hulk. The problem with that, it doesn't work in the slightest. I mean, there's not even a bit of damage. There's not even a little phase. The Incredible Hulk just keeps coming. I mean, he's like this force of nature, just keeps walking towards him. And this is really when all hope is lost for Iron Man. What do you do in the face of a guy where your greatest weapons basically have no impact on him whatsoever? Even during Worldbreaker Hulk, there was a little bit of impact, a little bit of fuzz, not enough that it really mattered at all. But at the end of the day, this is basically just Iron Man getting totally wrecked. Now, all this comes to a head with regards to the fact that we don't actually see the Incredible Hulk crush Iron Man. Instead, what we end up doing is really just kind of picking up with this idea that the Incredible Hulk had just sort of crushed his armor around him, kept him imprisoned, and that was about it. But with the two of them talking, with the two of them having this conversation, conversation, ultimately the Incredible Hulk is forced to come to grips with an absolute truth. Tony Stark did modify the gamma bomb. The problem with this is that in doing so, the idea here is that the bomb itself, as it was going to detonate, it was too much pressure in too small of a space. Essentially what would have happened is that with the gamma bomb detonating under the guise that the shielding would basically expand and then respectively explode in an outward direction, the shielding would be too extreme to withhold the explosion of the bomb. And so it literally would have resulted in creating just sort of negative energy. I have no real clue what would actually happen, but the result is that the bomb would basically result in Bruce Banner being killed. And so because of this, in the mind of Bruce Banner, Tony Stark saved his life. Tony Stark told him what was going to happen. The problem with this was that with Tony examining the bomb, realizing what was going to happen, and then in turn trying to report his findings to Bruce Banner ignored it. Bruce Banner ignored the email. The result was that when these changes were made, when Bruce Banner went back and started modifying things and working with things, what it meant was that when the bomb detonated, he was bombarded with gamma radiation. And so as a result, Bruce Banner turned himself into the Incredible Hulk. And that's the irony of it all, because this is the one thing that Tony Stark knows that Bruce Banner doesn't. But the problem with this is that he doesn't tell Bruce Banner this. And it makes sense that he doesn't, because Bruce Banner has lived with the idea that he hates the Incredible Hulk for years and years and years. He always looked at the whole gamma bomb explosion and him becoming the Hulk as just this weird circumstance, some events that took place outside of his control. There was no way that he could have stopped it from happening. But the truth of the matter is that Tony Stark tried to warn him. Bruce Banner ignored it. And so if Tony Stark told him this, if he said, hey, look, man, here's the email that I tried to send you. I tried to tell you something was going to happen if you were to detonate this bomb. Ultimately, Bruce Banner would have to come to grips with the fact that he's the reason why he is the way he is. And God only knows what the aftermath to this would be. If the Incredible Hulk laid waste to almost the entire superhero community, if he was this virtual, unstoppable force of nature because his family was killed during the events of Planet Hulk, what hope would the superhero and the human population on Earth have if his rage just blew up to the point after realizing that he's the one that made himself? So it's in the best interest of Tony Stark not to tell him that. Of course, this continues on with Bruce Banner's own story. And again, that's the nature of this. This was designed to bring in the Doc Green personality so that Marvel could go through and continue writing Incredible Hulk stories that would run directly up into All New, All Different Marvel during the events of Secret Wars. But again, this is all going to be in that great big playlist down in the comments section. You'll find all this stuff. After this, we'll do Axis, then we'll do Superior Iron Man. Superior Iron Man, I don't consider to be part of the main Marvel continuity just because of the fact that while it's been referenced a little bit, nothing ever really came of it. We've never seen like the fallout of Superior Iron Man. It was just this amazing 12-issue story that was written, and then none of the events were ever seen or heard from again, including the armor itself. But the fact remains, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.